What happened now? Well, as of just 10 hours ago, I mean, you can see it right here. If you've been paying attention, you'd see it at the Associated Press. The Virginia Supreme Court, which the Democrats so negligently failed to pack, has struck down Virginia's redistricting. So we have a slew of red states that have just, unilaterally from the top down passed forced mid-decade redistricting motions that have just gone through with no trouble whatsoever. The Republican legislatures have just scrawled, "Give us more districts" in crayon while the Supreme Court, cheers them on. Meanwhile, in places like Virginia and California, the voters express their will and vote in favor of redistricting, albeit barely in Virginia, and then the courts say no. This is actually a huge deal. It really is. Oh man, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. It might actually be over. The Supreme Court has not only gutted the Voting Rights Act, they fast tracked the Louisiana abolition of one of their black districts. Tennessee in a day got rid of their one black district. A day. It took them like no time at all. We'll talk more about that. I mean, maybe we won't talk more about it in the future. Maybe we'll talk more about it right now. 99% white Tennessee House Republicans pass racist 9-0 map stripping majority black Memphis of congressional representation. Tennessee is now 9-0 congressionally. To the deafening roar of everybody else being mad at them, they passed it. They passed it gleefully. I believe one of the reps in Tennessee wore a MAGA flag as a cape while doing this, and yeah, it took them like one day. It took them no time at all for 100% Republican federal representation from Tennessee. Might as well be not a single black person in the whole state. It was the person who put it forward. Well, I'm glad he's having fun. Meanwhile, in Alabama, right now, they're pushing forward a bill to advance a redistricting effort so hastily that they did it during a tornado siren.
Call us back in and say, now we didn't came, now they didn't call themselves coming back and trying to go. He didn't made the motion to pass the bill when we supposed to be going into recess.
The Supreme Court has opened the door to essentially infinite gerrymandering, at least along racial lines, and the Republicans are doing so immediately and effortlessly and from the top down because there are no rules when they do it and no one stops them and they can do what they want, and it's truly over. It's genuinely over. I feel like balkanization is the only way out at this point. Blue states actually have to start pulling at the threads. I genuinely don't know if even a dedicated Democratic Party would be capable of taking the institutional steps necessary to redress these wrongs. If they immediately whiplashed back, packed their state courts, and forced through maximal redistricting maps, they could fight back against this, but they won't, obviously. They obviously won't. But even if they did, I don't know if it would be enough. I genuinely don't know if it'd be enough. The Supreme Court has fired the starting line gun, and it's the House and Senate are now structurally weighted to benefit the Republicans. It is very, very possible that Democrats are going to win in the midterms by as much as 10, 12, 14 points, but only come out with a handful of seats more than Republicans. That the Senate will remain, maybe in this race it goes even, but again, it shouldn't be. If it was proportionally representative, the Senate and the House would both be skewed heavily towards the Democrats, judging by how things are going to go in these midterms. It might not be fixable structurally. God, we need another Reconstruction. Or like any, even a single one. The South kind of won, huh? Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Can the Dems still win the House like this? Yeah, but I still think it might be over. The Dems can win the House because Trump is so unpopular, but I don't know if the Democrats will ever be able to structurally undo the extent to which the legislature is biased in their favor. That is to say, the Democrats might temporarily hold the House while we wait for the next Democrat president to kick people into, incumbency bias in the other direction, and then it'll be like the House might just always be 30 seats more Republican than it should be forever. It'll like forever 10 more Senate seats and 30 to 40 more House seats for Republicans than they should have based on proportional representation, polling. And it might just be that way forever. So sometimes the Democrats will do so well that they manage to overwhelm that and temporarily hold some minor advantage in the federal legislature, but even then, only such. A de facto one-party state, yeah, it's kind of getting there. Obviously, the right thing to do here, the moral thing, would be for the Democrats to just ignore the Virginia Supreme Court order, the way Republicans have before, like they did in Ohio, but no. Don Scott, Speaker for the Virginia House, we respect the decision of the Supreme Court of Virginia. Or to paraphrase it, as I saw someone on Twitter, like Democrats will get publicly molested by Republicans day in and day out, then turn around and thank them. It's crazy. Can you imagine how Republicans would respond if something like this happened? If a Dem-packed state Supreme Court just undid a 4-seat advantage they won through a fucking referendum, a hard-fought referendum? That Republicans would be fucking firing the nukes right now. They'd be losing their fucking mind. It would be 24/7 news for months. It would be nonstop. But Democrats just meekly accept it. I don't think there's any fixing this, guys. I'm really sorry. We might. It's like not reading the room right now feels to me like pretending that the sea level isn't rising just because the tides go in and out over the course of a day. Political tides may go up and down, but the sea level is still on average rising. Republicans are still rising. You can benefit from temporary. Sometimes the tide goes down, okay? But it doesn't change the fact that on average, Justin Jones burned a flag in the building and called them white hoods. You should specify which flag. For all the good it does. Senate Majority Leader in Virginia has a very different tone in his statement than the House Leader. Ah, a lefty meme. Brilliant. They just need to do the amendment process all over again, Vaush. It's not that big of a deal. Sure, feel free to believe that. We'll see how things are in 6 months. Ignore historical precedent and ignore the rising of the ocean, okay? The tides continue up and down, up and down. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty bad. I don't know what to say, guys. It's genuinely very, 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 very bad. It kind of feels like an unreconcilable schism. I don't really know. I don't know if the Democrats are going to be able to do what's necessary. The Republicans just operate with such effortless. Nothing stops them because there are no rules for them. They can just do whatever they want. Every little procedural argument, every little hurdle for the Democrats is like this insurmountable barrier. And for the Republicans, it might as well not even exist. Even major barriers, like just flat out the fact that what they're doing is illegal, rarely deters Republicans. Dem rep face down. Yeah, I saw this. Give me a real reconstruction. I feel like in the short term, this might blow up in Republicans' faces. It might compound a pre-existing unpopularity, but I don't think Democrats are going to rewrite the rules in the way that they would need to. Like what you're saying is that as a consequence of the rising sea level, the tide might whiplash more frantically back and forth. Like we might temporarily for a time get a lower low tide due to, an exaggeration of tidal forces. But it still, to me, doesn't feel like it addresses the sea level rising. I disagree because Republicans at peak unpopularity are more powerful than they've ever been. Yeah, that's a really good way of summing it up, isn't it? The Republican Party right now, through Donald Trump, who is the face of the party, is as unpopular as any president has ever been. Congress is more unpopular now than it ever has been, and the president right now is more unpopular than he ever has been. And in spite of this, the Republican Party is unstoppable. They can do whatever they want. They have gutted the government. They openly commit fraud and steal billions from the stock market every single day. Trump just pardons everyone who asks for it as long as they're right wing and a crook of some kind. They have infinite power. No one stops them. And the Democrats are barely more popular than them because they offer nothing except for maybe a reprieve to this, which is not much and also not at all guaranteed. Do you think the establishment Dems could be overtaken by more left progressive types? I mean, sure, in the long run. I don't think it's going to happen quickly enough to make a difference here. It's also not just a matter of, like, who leads the Democrats. It might just be too late, you know? Like, this process didn't start with Trump, too. For decades, Republicans have flagrantly stacked the deck in their favor on federal, state, and local levels. They're doing everything in their power to skew things in their favor. And this is the reason why when a Democrat wants to gerrymander, they have to do it through like this months-long referendum that you have to campaign for, and it's expensive and costly and so on and so on. Whereas when a Republican wants to do it, they're just like, hey, state legislatures, we're all in favor, and then every single one of them goes, yep, and then it just happens. So is this the death knell of the Democratic Party? No. I think it's the death knell of, like, the Republic, basically. Can VA Dems just ignore the court ruling and say it's too close to the election? Just ignore the law? No, you must be thinking of Republicans. Only Republicans get to do that. Justin's speech before they took away his district.
Minutes.
These maps are racist tools of white supremacy at the behest of the most powerful white supremacist in the United States of America, Donald J. Trump. Memphis is the most beautiful place on the planet. It's the place that raised me, my brothers, my parents, my grandmothers, and where my ancestors' bones rest. And what you are doing today is eviscerating the only black majority congressional district in our state because we are majority black. We are here because this Republican Party has to seek to steal elections and seats because the president and the party have refused to address the pain, the suffering, and the struggling of everyday Tennesseans. This is about attacking, targeting, and cracking District 9 into pieces for more political and racial dominance and white supremacy in the state of Tennessee. And we need to realize that the Calais decision that you all are basing your decisions off of, that gutted the Voting Rights Act, that Voting Rights Act was paid in blood.
The court cited bogus stats too. You mean in Virginia? No, yeah. The argument in favor of their case was a bullshit procedural technicality.
It's not just a parchment of paper signed into law. It was paid in blood on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Paid in blood by Medgar Evers, paid in blood by Fannie Lou Hamer. It's been paid in blood year over year, time after time, assassination after assassination, lynching after lynching, so that more people might be able to ascertain access to this constitutional democratic republic experiment that is currently being gutted and seeking to be gutted by this chamber, by this House, this Senate, and this state. What is happening here is immoral and wrong. And I was reading my Bible early this morning, asking God why this is happening. Why, again, does it seem that white supremacy is seeming to gain? Why, again, does it seem like the pillars of pain that we have felt and experienced for over 400 years in this country continue to rise again?
It just goes to show, and it again, you know, pardon me for using this as an excuse to once more lambast liberals, but they will take everything you let them take, you know? The Republican Party got a little bit of momentum, even though they're historically unpopular, and the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act, and now immediately every red state in the South is looking to gut their black majority district or districts. They're just openly talking about it. Like it's not even, they're just like straightforwardly just hit the ground running. Zoom.
Whispered in the words of this Bible and in the words of those ancestors that have gone before us is just these simple words: we're still here. We are still here. This nation, this state has legislated and legalized the worst things in humanity, including our enslavement, and we are still here. Right in this country where, as one black woman said, your ancestors enslaved us, denied us of our rights, called us 3/5 of a person, and yet we are still here. You put us on cotton plantations and tobacco plantations. You denied our human rights and our right to exist as children of God, and we are still here. You destroyed Tulsa. You killed and lynched black folks on poplar trees. Shelby County, Tennessee had the most lynchings of anywhere in this state where you're taking this district, and we are still here. You've had 3 strikes laws, mass incarceration, denied us of who we are, and we are still here. And today you'll take the only majority black district from us. But I want you to know, and I want my nephew, sons, and the future to know, no matter what you do, no matter how much you try and break us and make us bend and make us quit, we will still be here.
Leader Camper, you're economic.
Don't want to interrupt that. Yeah, it took them like all of one day to get rid of the one black district in Tennessee. He's not wrong, but it's not about civil rights here issues. Well, no, it very much is here. Every Tennessee Republican is a would-be Confederate and Klanner, 100%. We never did Reconstruction. We ought to have done Reconstruction. These people are animals. They have been waiting for the day to bust their, slave manacles back out of the basement. Animosity towards blacks and immigrants is basically like 99% of the politics these whites have down here. That's really about it, Like they're just straightforwardly Confederates, yeah. Yeesh. Speculative, but not unlikely. All of the Republicans are moving to do this as quickly as possible. They've already done it in Tennessee. Looking to do it in Alabama and Florida. I'm reminded of this, which I retweeted to remind myself, that in response to Utah getting one blue district to represent Salt Lake City, which is a very blue area, the Utah GOP sued federally to block the map, packed their own state Supreme Court and created 2 brand new justices, and then created a, quote, constitutional court panel to hear challenges to state law, which they could use to avoid the Supreme Court altogether. And now, just today, one of the liberal Supreme Court justices in Utah stepped down, meaning that in her seat now, a new right-wing hack can be appointed. Likely that one blue district in Utah will not last long. Democrats are not willing or able to do what is necessary here to close the gap. They already signed the Florida map. Remember when Florida voted and got an overwhelming majority of people to vote in favor of banning redistricting, and then the Florida GOP just ignored it? Remember that? Like, just straightforwardly, like something like, it was like 59% of Floridians voted for it, and they just straight up ignored it. That was for allowing felons to vote back in 2018. No, it's happened more than once. This map could end up being a dummy mander. Yeah, but it can only be a dummy mander when there's a blue wave. That's the point. You guys are relishing the potential for a big win in it is 2026 for the upcoming midterms. But like, what happens when Trump isn't at fucking minus 20 popularity, or sorry, minus whatever the fuck he's at right now. You know, what happens when a Dem's in office? Like, we're basically guaranteeing Republicans control the legislature like 90% of the time. What happens when every farmer dies? Well, then we'll be free. To be fair, Vaush, in either direction, the speculation is either false hope or needlessly doomering. It's a little bit limited, don't you think? If you predict good things, that's false hope, and if you predict bad things, it's needlessly doomering. What if you look at available evidence and try to make sound judgments about what's likely to happen? Aren't California and New York going to gerrymander out all the Republicans? I think we're picking up like fucking less than 10 seats there. Nothing compared to what the Republicans are getting in their combined like post-Supreme Court Voting Rights Act gutting redistricting. Is what our party's focused on, dog. Yeah, I saw that. You might wonder what Democratic leadership is up to on a day where, just rolling it through, right-wingers in the Virginia Supreme Court strike down a referendum-voted redistricting. Tennessee gets rid of their one black majority district. Alabama, Republican representatives do the same, so on and so forth, right? Bad day for democracy. What's Schumer up to? Praising Trump's pledge to disclose UFO information. He finally found a populist bone in his body. This is what he's concerned with. Louisiana suspended their primaries after early voting had begun. Yeah. Sorry, let's not forget, and I know we talked about this a little bit ago, let's not forget that the Supreme Court is so complicit in this nationwide gerrymandering project for the Republicans that the Supreme Court fast-tracked Louisiana's ability to redistrict and get rid of a black majority district after gutting the Voting Rights Act, even though the elections had already begun. They tossed out the existing map when tens of thousands of votes had already been cast. Basically unprecedented. Can somebody tell me when the last time that was happened? The Supreme Court authorizing the tossing out of a map while votes are already being counted? It's just never happened before. Because my understanding is that it's literally never happened. At least not, since after the Civil War. They're also supposed to wait 30 days before acting in SCOTUS rulings. Yes, but SCOTUS went ahead and directly fast-tracked this and said, nah, don't worry about it. No 30-day wait. Election already happening. Doesn't matter. Yeah, go for it. We gutted the Voting Rights Act specifically so you could go ahead and get rid of that second black majority district in Louisiana. Do it quick.
Early voting continues in Louisiana today, even as the status of the state's primary elections remains in flux. Last week, the U.S. Supreme Court struck...
How does that work? I don't know how to put it other than boiling it down to a sentence, but it's, for the first time ever, the Supreme Court issued an additional unprecedented ruling to cancel existing elections in a state so that the state could more rapidly implement a map that takes away a black majority district. Like, I swear to God, the level of anti-democracy here is greater than the fucking pre-Civil Rights Act days. I genuinely think right now the Republicans are acting with more reckless, racist abandon than they could have gotten away with back in the 1950s. Because in the 1950s, they wouldn't have been rushing to get it all out the gate in the next 2 years. Whereas right now, they're like, sorry, libs. Fucking racing out the door as quickly as possible. It's insane what they're getting away with right now.
Struck down Louisiana's congressional map, and the state's Republican governor suspended primary elections for the U.S. House so new districts could be set. But voting for the U.S. Senate race is proceeding. Liz Landers is in Baton Rouge tonight and joins us now with more. So, Liz, just remind us, how did we get here in the first place? And what is the latest with those efforts to redraw Louisiana's congressional map?
Do you think Dems will or can even do anything to reverse this? No, I don't think they will or can. I mean, they could if they were as strong as the Republicans are. But, no, they won't.
Maps.
Amna, the Supreme Court struck down the existing map here in Louisiana, calling it an illegal racial gerrymander. Louisiana has 6 congressional districts. 2 of them are majority-minority districts represented by 2 black congressmen, Troy Carter and also Cleo Fields. 30-something% of Louisianans are Black residents. And Governor Jeff Landry announced last week that he was going to redraw the congressional maps here. And he has suspended for now those House primaries, which were set for May 16th. Tomorrow, the Louisiana State House, just a few steps away from where we are here in Baton Rouge, is going to start that process of redrawing the maps. The Senate and Governmental Affairs Committee is going to meet at 9 a.m. They're going to have public testimony as
So what do we do after the peaceful way, which was supposed to be voting, gets ignored? I feel like this just promotes more political violence. I mean, in the words of JFK, for which Hassan is getting lambasted for posting it, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. Yeah, no, for sure. They are 100% increasing the like average level of social instability in the future. That's not that like that's just a fact. It's a straightforward and predictable outcome of the decisions they're making. They are nullifying the democracy both in effect and in perception. So yeah, it's going to be that's going to be what happens down the line, sure. I mean, their goal here isn't to like preserve the integrity of the country or anything. It's not like they care. They're all like 80, you know, they don't give a shit.
Part of that. And the chairman of that committee told the Louisiana Illuminator that he is considering a map that will have only one majority Black district instead of the current two, and that will likely preserve the district of Congressman Fields.
Wow.
All of this has to be very confusing.
AP claiming state media claiming everything's normal. Yeah. Fucking John Roberts, man. My Republicans on the Supreme Court are not partisan political agents t-shirt is raising a lot of questions answered by the t-shirt happening all over. Minnesota Republicans are literally hiding legislation in a desk drawer to prevent it from coming up to a vote. One of Speaker DeMuth's deputies just admitted that he was, quote, instructed not to report, end quote, a bill banning assault weapons / high-capacity magazines the Senate already passed. They really can do anything. It's great. They could do. They just like we aren't presenting the bill because we aren't. We don't want to. We're just gonna hide it. Our dog ate it. Like this is like they can do anything. There are no limits to their power. They never get in trouble for this. They never. When Republicans go to jail, it is because they've been caught with child pornography and then they serve 6 months, like Trump's pastor friend recently did. You know, that's the only time they go to jail. They never, ever go to jail for procedural fuckery or treason or sedition or anything. They just do whatever. They just do anything. It literally doesn't matter. They can do anything. They could probably be a lot more audacious than they're already being. They could just openly, in the red states, they could just openly violate like federal protections to equal treatment and just do whatever they want. Who's gonna stop them? The Supreme Court? Title IX or whatever. They could just do whatever. They could implement a fucking poll tax in Texas if they wanted to. Genuinely, I really want to know, is there anybody here who believes that Texas couldn't get away with it if they just put a poll tax in place at their voting booths? If they just did that, it happens in like 2 days. House, Senate, signed into law. Flagrantly illegal. Does anyone think they wouldn't? Technically, only federal elections can't have a poll tax. No, I'm saying for federal elections. Because right now, I genuinely think they could do it. I think they could do that for federal elections, and it just wouldn't be stopped. Who was the Republican representative just the other day who said casually to a journalist, I believe, well, why shouldn't we have ICE agents at polling places? What's wrong with that? I'm not kidding, by the way. I might be misremembering very slightly the phrasing, but that was the message. The actual exact message is identical to what I just said. Who was it? Which representative was it? I genuinely think they could put up a sign saying no blacks and just enforce it at gunpoint and they get away with it. I truly, genuinely think you're correct. Yeah. I think they could do that in Tennessee if they wanted to. I really think that. And I don't think that because it wouldn't make people mad. I'm sure people on Twitter would get real mad about it. I just think that it would, like, there structurally, nothing would come of it. SCOTUS would overturn a poll tax? Yeah, like, in what, 3 years? Also, dog, they literally just gutted the Voting Rights Act. Like, it was the Voting Rights Act, man. Jesus, at least Roe v. Wade was, like, on shaky procedural grounds. That was the fucking Voting Rights Act. I don't think a lot of non-Americans or maybe younger people in chat aren't aware of how, like, fundamental that was. Like, that was passed alongside the civil rights. Like, imagine just you wake up one day and they've just nulled the Civil Rights Act. That's what they did. They just did a different part of it. Legitimately, the degree to which institutions have shattered in just the past 10 years is insane. Like, when I was learning about the Supreme Court, they still had to put tons of effort into finding actual law to justify shit. Yeah, like, not to say the Supreme Court was always ruling on the side of good 10 years ago, but the standard of judicial pretense, or I guess I should say, like, legal pretense the Republican judiciary had to go through back, like, 10, 20 years ago was incomparably greater to what they have to do today. Now their argument for overturning the fucking Voting Rights Act was just dog shit, bro. Not even, like, believable from their perspective. Vaush, what do you suggest we do then, like, as a single citizen? Stay in school. What's supposed to be the check against SCOTUS? There's no check on the SCOTUS. They don't have a check. By the way, Ruth Bader Ginsburg choosing not to retire when Obama was president's a huge reason for this. Yeah, but this is still kind of part of what I mean, because if the Republican Party made a series of mistakes that allowed the Democrats to appoint too many of their own people to the Supreme Court, this wouldn't happen in the other direction. Like, we're dealing with a situation where every slip up, every loss of power from the Democrats means permanent gains from the Republicans. They grab territory and they never let it go. When our side makes mistakes or is weak for a time, they gobble everything up. But you know what? I was around back when Obama had a bicameral majority. Motherfucker had a strong majority in the Senate and was mega popular. He fucking blitzed McCain. And Democrats had far more power back then, institutionally. Yeah, he had 60 fucking seats, plus, you know, the independents. Far more institutional power than Republicans did. And then it just went away. It just went away. He could have rewritten the fucking country. He could have passed anything. Anything. But it just, Meanwhile, the Republicans in lockstep with fucking, like, 2 seats majority in the House and the near split Senate, they just, everything they want. The Supreme Court, everything they want. Mitch McConnell basically destroyed this country. No, you're not fucking listening to me, okay? It was always going to come down to this. One side of the aisle plays for keeps, and the other one doesn't. One side lets power slip through their fingers like sand at the beach, and the other side grabs onto everything they can. The Democrats enjoyed near universal popularity and had every institution under their arm. And what did they do with it for 2008 to 2010? Fucking nothing. Republicans right now have the barest, tiniest thread of legitimate power and a whole lot of illegitimate power, and they're using it to... They took away the fucking Voting Rights Act, man! It's not just about Obama or McConnell or any individual actor. It's just that at the end of the day, one side was willing to play for keeps and the other wasn't and still isn't. And that's because Republicans know they can do anything with no blowback from their donors or their voters, whereas Democrats have to fear losing out with both because they're too weak to build a cultural consensus, even though, like, Obama should have been able to move... Obama, it's just remarkable to me that a person who was that popular at the height of his popularity, that he wasn't able to build a cultural consensus. Trump is like half as popular as Obama was during Obama's peak popularity, and somehow the cultural power just slipped. Obama's still more popular than Trump. Does it feel like it when you look at the news? We can spend a lot of time and energy engaging in blame attribution, but we already kind of got it. Now what? I don't know, man. Rice and beans. What do you want from me? I've answered this a million times. I think the collapse is inevitable. Our odds are best if the greatest possible number of sympathetic non-Hitlerite politicians are in office, and also work out, delete Facebook, go to the gym, etc., etc. I mean, I've said all. I mean, it's not very novel, but it's what I believe. I just think it's important people understand the gravity of the crime that's been committed here and the extent of the malicious incompetence demonstrated by the Democrats. Why bother with progressive victory then? Remember when I said we're better off the greatest number of non-Hitlerite politicians are in power? You got to listen. It was a key, it was a little Easter egg I pitched in there, you know? To give you a secret key into my motivations. Sorry, I'm being a little testy. But in fairness, the country that I live in is dying super rapidly. So, like, I'm a little bit peeved about that, I guess. Are there other ideas besides placing all hopes in a broken vending machine? Listening to you, Uves, obviously. We're waiting on our wisdom from you. It's leaning towards Balkanization, TBH. Yeah, it kind of is. And I think that if the Democratic Party was unified and competent, I think that the best thing they could reasonably hope for would be to lean in on the Balkanization and starve out the red states. After a successful midterm venture, they should deprive the red states of federal funding and subsidies. Be as partisan with it as Trump has been towards blue states, and then multiply it by 10. Just really turn the screws on them. Go after people, start sanctioning them, turn the FBI on everyone in the Republican Party and everyone who's aided them, and that's a long list of people. I mean, really, really just institutionally fuck them. Because they're a terrorist group. They're evil. And it's the only way for the Republic to survive. These things could be done, by the way. Like, to do these things as the Democrats would not be any more audacious than what Republicans have been getting away with while they steal from the stock market and fuck children over in the Oval Office. The Democrats could hypothetically do this without stealing from the stock market or fucking children, which in my opinion would be significantly more moral. So we're talking about, at the very least, equal levels of audacity and greater levels of morality. Just off those, just very basic math. Bar napkin math here, you know? They could do it, but they won't. Can the red states survive in their own? Genuine question. No, not really, not most of them. Most of them are third world backwaters that are sustained by the only blue areas in their borders, the cities. But action could be taken, you know? California cut off from the federal government would still be a borderline superpower. Alabama cut off from the federal government it'd be like Lord of the Flies over there. Please don't cut us off. Dog, are you in Alabama? I'm being so fucking for real with you. You need to pack your shit in a bindle and get the fuck out of there, okay? It's getting so bad so quickly. It's getting bad everywhere, but the red states are going to sink first and fastest, okay? I know you've got friends or family, whatever. I'm not saying like be homeless in a blue state. I'm just saying like, you know, like really. Well, I just don't want you guys to be feeling like the Jews back in 1933 who were like, this will sort itself out. You know what I mean? Jewish guy being like, dang, should have skedaddled out of town a little bit earlier, you know? I still have a year left of college, and then as soon as I'm done with that, I'm leaving West Virginia. West Virginia? All right, well, good news. West Virginia is actually so dead that it might null your state government's ability to fuck you over in the meantime. Like, you're not like Texas or Florida, where you have an active, militantly evil state government. Like, your state government seems mostly concerned with directing as much of your state's GDP of $10 towards the coal industry as possible, which is, while not benign, at least less, like, active than what Texas is doing right now, you know? What if we push for proportional representation at the state level, start a wave that's hard to argue with? It has nothing to do with arguing. Republicans aren't in power right now because they win arguments. They just take everything. Republicans are pro-pedophilia. They're not winning that argument. The being correct isn't enough. This is the problem liberals have always, not just liberals, but like liberally minded people, which is, I mean, the simple version of saying this is, you know, you can't reason a person out of a position they didn't reason themselves into. But like, the Republicans are objectively wrong, morally and factually, on every single thing they do and believe in. It's shocking how consistent they are. Not even by accident do they stumble into correct positions. If they believe a thing normatively, it is evil. If they believe a thing descriptively, it is incorrect. Everything they do and are and believe in is wrong. The arguments aren't really, that's not the playing field right now. You know what I mean? You're trying to argue like orcs. You're trying to argue fucking the agents of chaos here. You know, you're not getting what you. My father thinks that Social Security being cut will bring out riots. Do you agree? Nah, because the average young person's going to be like, "Oh, I wasn't going to live long enough to see that," and the average old person's going to be like, "Oof, ouch, my hip," or they're going to be like, "I'm sure Trump is a good reason for it." Oof, dies. Yeah. What would even bring about riots? Does anyone care about anything? Oh, well, also, riots don't really do anything anymore because it used to be, and I'm not making any like recommendations here. I'm not making statements to lead you in a particular direction. But the reason riots historically were dangerous and feared by the ruling class is because the rioters would do something. Nowadays, when a riot breaks out, it's like people start looting the fucking shoe store, you know, downtown or whatever. Like no one, like the rioting is just everyone's mad or whatever. The Foot Locker, yeah, they burn the Waymos or whatever, which like, okay, you caused $1 million in property damage that will just get spent by the city on the contractors who are profiting from the previous contracts that they were already running on, you know? Like it used to be that like the reason the king had a castle was because if the peasantry got angry, the king would not want to be in an unguarded cabin, you know? He would want to be in a castle. Thank goodness we're all so much more civilized now. Why would Republicans cut Medicare and actively kill off their own voters? They don't, dude. They literally like don't give a shit. That'd be like asking a cult leader, like, why do you encourage your followers to kill themselves? Doesn't that decrease your overall influence and they don't fucking care. They don't give a shit. They love evil. They don't care. They do not care. And as far as they're concerned, they've already won, right? It's not like the Democrats are going to do anything, you know? Republicans can stay out of office for 4, 8, 12 years even, just, you know, running culture. They still have every fucking news agency, every social media company, every tech giant in their pocket working with it. It doesn't matter. What, Democrats get to run an unpopular federal gambit for 8 years, get nothing done, and then the Republicans come back more popular than they would have been if they'd just been holding the line the whole time. 8 years is a long time, you know? People will forget. I never really got the Republicans until I realized this, you know? There were so many choices they made that just didn't make sense to me, and I was trying to rationalize, but I realized I was doing more work on their behalf than they ever did. Like, why would they do that? Because they're evil. It literally is true. It's a straightforward descriptor that is right 100% of the time with zero exceptions. Every time they advocate for something, it's because it increases the amount of suffering in the world. That's it. It's the only consistent. They are more consistently in favor of people suffering than they are in favor of literally, they're more pro-evil than they are pro-white. They're more pro-evil than they are pro-wealthy. Like Trump's tariff bullshit was not broadly pro-wealthy. It didn't really enrich the corporatists, you know? A lot of what Trump has done has actually been pretty inconvenient for the moneyed class, but it does increase the amount of suffering in the world, so of course they go for it. Yeah, it's more like the wealthy are contented with the knowledge that being pro-evil will usually also mean being pro-bourgeoisie. Not always, but most of the time. So the Republicans just, you know, happen to stumble into pro-business policies, you know, like 95% of the time, but the other 5%, hey, that's just how it is. You think if Reconstruction actually continued, we wouldn't be in this position? I think that an aggressive and continuous reconstructive effort following the Civil War would have prevented us from being in this position. Yeah, for sure. As long as it was followed through. You know, don't give up on it after 1 or 2 or 10 or 50 years. Isn't this because of capitalism, not because of the Confederacy? Yeah, but the Confederacy and the racial animus from the South gave a language and a cultural through line to the culture war distractions that the Republicans in power use to get away with their agenda. Like, capitalism might be the real motivating force, but they would not be able to get away with what they're doing right now if it wasn't for the fact that their entire base is motivated almost entirely by the fear of being racially cuckolded. That really does drive. Like, if the Republicans had to make raw capitalist arguments, they would not have won in 2016 or 2024. You know, Trump going up there and he's like, "I'm not going to change anything. I'm pro the business class," or whatever. Like, it doesn't sell. The racial animus does the heavy lifting here, even if it's not really the point. How does that make sense? Aren't most of the things we see today a capitalist reaction to FDR policies? You know how FDR's policies got torn apart? Racism. He was only able to get away with it because people were so desperate following the Great Depression, but basically every single good thing he built has been destroyed by Republicans arguing that it unfavorably benefits black people when it should just be going to the whites. So better it not exist at all than go to the blacks. That's like everything that he built, genuinely all of it. From the infrastructural investments to the social welfare to the jobs programs, literally all of it. It was the same argument every time. So not doing Reconstruction properly gave the capitalist class the voice and the arguments that they needed. They could get away with just raw racial animus as a motivator for making everyone, including the white working class, worse off. I don't think some chatters understand how bad it is down here in the South. These people have not changed at all mentally from the Civil War. They still want slaves and feel that animus. For sure, 100%. Absolutely. I didn't agree with your cattle take until I realized these isolated rural communities only exist to act as a Republican voter base. This is why when woke people say that America is fundamentally a white supremacist country, I really don't think people understand the extent to which it doesn't mean other countries aren't racist. In fact, there are countries that are more racist than America, despite not being at their root a white supremacist country, if that makes any sense. Like, I think that on average, a country like France is more racist than a country, or like Poland, sure, is more racist than America, even though those countries weren't founded on white supremacy. But it's important to understand that in America, a significant amount, if not all of the social and political fabric of this country is built on keeping whites racist and disproportionately powerful so Republicans can get away with doing whatever they want. Like American rural culture, the deference to farmers, the way the continued existence, despite it being unnecessary and non-existent anywhere else in the world, of the Electoral College, the existence of the Senate. Like, there are so many things that we have preserved entirely because it can be used to take advantage of a racial bias from the white majority in this country. Conservatives, not Republicans necessarily. Yes, that's true. That's true. We gotta move on from this, man. This shit's depressing.